Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to a moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Up in just a few minutes in our Going Deep segment brought to you by CO2 Lift, we're featuring Dr. Sarah Reardon, a board-certified pelvic floor physical therapist with over 16 years of experience helping women with pelvic floor issues, particularly bowel and bladder issues, painful intercourse, pregnancy, postpartum recovery, and staying dry and pain free in the later years of life. She's the founder of the Vagina Whisperer, an online platform with pelvic floor and core exercise programs. Sarah is passionate about bringing vaginas into the spotlight to normalize conversations around sexual health. Today, she's here to help me demystify sexual shame, chat women's health, and vaginal rejuvenation. Now, in a world where open conversations about sexuality and women's well being are crucial, now more than ever, it's my aim to shed light on these often overlooked areas. I'm hoping to help break down the barriers that surround sexual shame and explore the nuances of women's health. By addressing these topics with sensitivity and knowledge, I hope to empower my sisters, challenge societal norms, and foster a deeper understanding of the importance of holistic well being. Chatting female empowerment, dismantling taboos, and demystifying sexual shame is the incredible Dr. Sarah Reardon. Welcome to the show, Stunner.
Thank you, Zen. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's dive right in. So, we might not all want to admit it, but most of us have a preferred word for vagina, be it fanny, muff, minge, cooch. I'm all for that, but I'm also for those who prefer to solely use the correct anatomical term. But vagina nicknames are, in fact, here to stay, and a lot of them are quite funny. And life is just boring when it's not spent having a bit of laugh over terms like lady garden, right? So, Dr. Reardon, you go by the handle the Vagina Whisperer. That's quite clever. What are the top names that you have heard women refer to the vaginas?
You just named so many of them, but I mean, I've heard everything from cookie and coochie and nani, and the list just goes on. I think what we're really trying to do here is, I think it's great to have fun and have names for these parts of our bodies, but we also want people to kind of be able to identify parts of their body. What is the vagina? What is the vulva? And then we can educate future generations about these body parts instead of just calling them kind of fun pet names.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more because there's almost like a shame in just saying vagina, right? I remember when my daughter was just learning how to speak and we were identifying her body parts, my mother-in-law and my mom were giving her like code names or pet names. And I was like, no, it's vagina. Like
Correct.
it's a vagina.
It
That's what
is.
it is. And there's no shame in calling it my vagina.
Right.
And and I still say that to this day, right? So finally we're at the beginning of redressing the wrongs and misinformations around this neglected organ. And it starts with, educating our little girls. Now, why do you think there's a shame and embarrassment in the word sex and vagina? Do you think it's cultural? Do you think it's generational?
I think both. I mean, if we look back at kind of the messaging we've gotten growing up, and I think the older generations got, it was your vagina smells, use this scented soap, use this wash to clean it. Oh, you leak urine, use these pads to hide it. And it's normal, but don't talk about it. And the messaging has often been leaks are part of being a lady. Painful sex during menopause is normal, or this is your new body after a mom, just deal with it. And it's been very much kind of brushed under the rug instead of really brought to the forefront and said, hey, these are things that we're dealing with. They're just body parts like every other part of our body, but we also want help for them. We don't want to have to hide them, shame them, cover their scents, cover their smells, cover the leaks kind of thing.
You are so right. I had this very conversation with Dr. Amir, who trends by NYC Gyno, and I remember saying in the interview, there's a study, a 2022 study by gynecologists at the University of Manchester in England, and less than 10% of women were able to accurately label female genitalia. The clitoris is even more taboo than the vagina, and arguably the most neglected human organ by medicine. I mean, it's still inadequately depicted in most medical textbooks and barely touched upon in medical training. And this is a serious problem. I mean, women have been injured by this lack of knowledge through botched reconstruction surgeries, anti-incontinence procedures, obstetric tears and repairs, and vulvectomies. And so we have to start talking about this. Pages like yours, profiles like yours that women stumble on social media that are so educational are so critical now more than ever, because you're speaking directly to women who need to hear this, because even their own gynecologists are not saying this stuff. So thank you so much for having a great informational page. Now, how do you feel about vaginal rejuvenation and non-invasive procedures? Is it something we should be practicing?
I think that everything has its place. It's, I think of it more of a cosmetic, sometimes plastic surgery kind of space where, there are parts of our body that people are very sensitive or self-conscious about. So say you have enlarged labia. Well, that can be something that visually is not appealing for you, but also it can cause irritation and rubbing in your underwear or difficulty wearing certain types of clothing. So there are kind of very real reasons that people want to have these. And I always say that we want to offer people options. So for some people with respect to, vaginal rejuvenation, if they're going to it for a tighter vagina or even urinary leakage, I give them options. You can try exercises, you can try stimulators, you can try, procedures and surgeries or vibrating chairs or whatever it may be. But I think we want to give people options, the pros and cons, and then just really inform them of, if you have this procedure done, you may need to have it repeated. It doesn't just kind of last your lifetime. So, I think that it's just more information. I think people are often presented with, hey, this is your only option and this is the direction you need to go, when there's actually a lot of options. I also really want to help women know that this is not an area of our body to be ashamed about. I always say, people are like, how do you work with vaginas all day? I'm like, it's like working with an ankle, right? Like, it's a part of the body. If something's wrong with it, we want to fix it. So we just want to give them, kind of minimize shame, really maximize acceptance, and let them know that you're not alone.
I love the humor in that, but you're right. It's like, to your point, it's as simple as that. And sex in general, is viewed as taboo, and something that we should talk very quietly about. I mean, the act of sex alone can help strengthen your pelvic floor. It's everything you talk about. A strengthened pelvic floor can, have offer benefits: less pain during sex, reduced chance of vaginal prolapse. I mean, women who continue to be sexually active after menopause, I was just saying this, telling my mom this, are less likely to have significant vaginal atrophy, what we call the thinning of the vaginal walls. And that can cause pain during sex and urinary symptoms. So we must continue having sex.
Well, and that's one of the things, is that if you have pain with sex, you don't want to have sex, right? We have enough reasons to not want to have sex. We're tired, we're exhausted, we've got kids in the bed. But I think that we want to say, hey, if you are having pain, what are the reasons for that and what can help? Is it hormonal therapy, exercises, a perineal tear, dryness, things like that, and really help women understand their bodies better. And also the medical system. I think, again, we've often just said, oh, this is a normal part of postpartum life or menopausal life, deal with it. But that is not the case. There are so many options out there. And again, we want people to feel good in their bodies and experience pleasure and joy. And sex is a great way to do that. But if it's painful, it's something that we're not going to want to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So you got to fix the root. Now, the root of the problem, of the pain. And what solutions are you recommending for vaginal dryness and discomfort, and even something as simple as, how do you pick the right lube?
Right. Well, there's so many things to think about when we think about dryness and lubrication, and I'll break them down into two pieces. So for vaginal dryness, I really say, this is a part of our body, just like our skin. We put so much care into our skincare routines for our face. We want to think about our skincare routine for our vulva. So you want to make sure that you're staying hydrated and drinking plenty of water. Avoid any products that are irritating, have chemicals that cause burning, stinging. I always say, if it sparkles, glitters, or glows, or has a scent, don't put it on your vulva. You need all natural products down there. You don't want to be washing with any harsh soaps. And then you also want to use a vaginal moisturizer at night if you have dryness. So something as simple as coconut oil. There's another product called V Magic that's olive oil based. So those are great for daily moisture. On the flip side, when it comes to lubricants, tons of options. My favorite is a water-soluble lubricant. It's, dries with the tissue so it doesn't hang out and linger and harbor bacteria, but you may have to reapply it during intercourse. You can also use silicone lubricants, but those can't be used with silicone toys. So if you're using a toy that's silicone, you have to use a different type of lube. Or you can use an oil-based lubricant. Again, something as simple as coconut oil, but you can't use oil-based lubricants with latex condoms because it will break down the latex. So lots of options. I just recommend urinating after sex to avoid any bacteria in the urinary tract, and also just cleansing the area with warm water afterwards to kind of rinse any of the lubes or kind of chemicals away.
Great information there. Very, very well said. We were talking about this a little bit earlier, but I had radioactive iodine treatment done for Graves' disease, and the radiation caused a lot of dryness and down there. So I actually discovered this product, CO2 Lift V, and it lifts, it hydrates, it rejuvenates, and it was like easy. It was 3 applications, and then I just did maintenance. I mean, it really helped tighten and lift it off for me, and I know that there's testimonials out there for other women, and it basically uses carbon dioxide. It's so simple. It enhances the circulation by basically rushing oxygen-rich blood to tissue and regenerates cells to improve, obviously, sensitivity and lubrication. It was phenomenal. It worked for me. So that's something that I recommend, and it's easy. It's non-invasive. You could do it at home, but it took a lot of. I mean, I had to go through 100 different products to find something that really worked. And then I found your page, and your page is it completely top to bottom filled with so much information. She's her handle is at the dot vagina dot whisperer. Now, this subject for this is subjective for everyone, but is there a recommended frequency for women to be having sex and or masturbating?
So I am a fan of self-stimulation. I think that you don't always have to have a partner to be able to be sexually active.
Same.
And I also think that you want to explore with your own body. If you don't know what pleasures you, how can you communicate that with somebody else? So I recommend it. I think that there's lots of different ways that we can do that, but kind of get to know yourself, your body, and then you may feel more comfortable when there's another partner or two in the room. With respect to recommended frequency of intercourse, it totally varies. There is such a wide range. There's a really wonderful book called Come As You Are, and that book really talks about that there's a spectrum. For some people, it may be every day to 3 times a week to have sexual activity. For others, it may be 3 times a month. So there is just a spectrum, but going with what your normal is really important. And also kind of identifying what are the factors as to why you don't want to have sex. What are the things that are putting your foot on the brake? Is it pain? Is it dryness? Is it body confidence? Is it fatigue, exhaustion, a disconnect with your partner? And then taking your foot off the brake in some of those aspects, but what puts your foot on the gas? Pleasure, lubrication, timing, different things like that, foreplay. So kind of identifying what are those 2 factors for you that can help you put your foot on the gas, but also help take your foot off the brake. And that's different for everyone.
All right, there you go. So rest assured, ladies, that if you're not having sex 3 times a day, you are normal.
I would say 3 times a day is on the high end. I would
Yeah.
say once to 3 times a week is like a more normal
Oh, I
range.
was teasing that because if it was up to the guys, I mean, they wake up, they go to bed, and no problem, let's
Right.
go. And we're on a clock with the kids. I mean, I put sex on the calendar. If I don't, you're not getting it. Now, people in romantic relationships, for a fact, who had frequent sex 1 to 2 times a week, had more immunoglobulin A in their saliva, and people who had infrequent sex less than once a week had significantly less IgA. Now, IgA is the antibody that plays a role in preventing illnesses and is the first line of defense against the human papillomavirus, or otherwise known as HPV, which is a fun fact. I love to throw that out there. So, interesting fact. If you want to keep going, this is one reason. Now, Dr. Reardon, what demographic of women typically seek your services, and what is the median age of your patients?
I would say everything from I start seeing young women in my clinic at the age of 16 to 18 and then up into their 80s. I mean, you can have pelvic floor issues all across your lifespan, from the first time you try to insert a tampon or have a pelvic exam and it's painful, your first attempt at sexual intercourse and it's painful. It's a huge myth that sex should be painful the first time or even after giving birth, and that is not the case. So if you do have pain with sex, I highly recommend kind of seeking some pelvic floor therapy or resources for that. And then in the later years of life, again, it can be painful sex with menopause, urinary leakage, bladder issues, prolapse. But especially kind of in the pregnancy postpartum space, we see the majority of our clients between the ages of 25 to 45. And this is also a generation that we're saying we want to change the narrative about our vaginas. We don't want to end up in diapers. We don't want to end up sexless. Like, what can we do now to better take care of our bodies?
You are
And
so right.
so they're coming to us and saying, like I either want to be proactive or I've been dealing with these issues and I don't want to deal with them anymore. And so that's, I would say, the bulk of the folks that we see.
Yeah, so it's great because you're catering to a necessity. You're catering to a generation wanting to change this approach, which I love. Now, we have probably 45 seconds left, but how important is intimacy in a relationship?
I think intimacy is really important. And I think it's not just sexual intimacy, it can be everything from holding hands to physical touch to verbal communication. When it comes to sexual intimacy, I think oftentimes we need to have those other pieces in place to get to that sexual intimacy part. And to what you were mentioning before, when we have orgasms, when we have sex, we release oxytocin in our brains, and that is a feel good hormone and chemical. So the more that we're able to do that, the better we can feel about our bodies, about ourselves, and even about our partners and relationships. So there are a lot of obstacles in the way. Again, we don't want pelvic floor health to be one of them, but I hope that these conversations can continue to help us optimize our sexual health.
Yeah, you said it. You're right on. And this oxytocin, or it's also called the love or intimacy hormone, to your point, um, in combination with the endorphins during an orgasm, the combination of these hormones can act as a sedation. So it's going to help you sleep better. And it's a headache relief too. Another study showed that sexual activity can provide full or partial relief from migraines and cluster headaches. And if people who were sexually active during their attacks, 60% reported an improvement during a migraine and 91% reported moderate to complete relief in cluster headaches, which is interesting because I typically do suffer from migraines. So it gives me all the more reason to, want to cuddle up. But we are out of time officially. Thank you so much for being so transparent and full of information. You are amazing. You're truly the vagina whisperer.
Thank you, Zen.
Oh, no, that was incredible. Guys, you definitely have to check her out. That was our Going Deep segment brought to you by CO2Lift.com. And that was the Vagina Whisperer. You could head directly to her website, thevaginawhisperer.com. There's free pelvic floor guides. You can go directly to the website and /free downloads, or you can head directly on the gram at the.vagina.whisper. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by CO2 Lift. As we age, our skin loses moisture and elasticity, causing wrinkled skin. You can reverse this aging process with CO2 Lift. CO2 Lift utilizes the powerful benefits of carbon dioxide to lift, tighten, and regenerate your skin. This simple, painless at-home carboxytherapy treatment is scientifically proven to reverse the aging process. You will see reduction in wrinkles, increase luminosity, and improve pigmentation, sagging, skin tone, and radiance. For more information or to order CO2 Lift, go to CO2Lift.com.